Welcome to Vengeance Files. Please like this video and subscribe to Vengeance Files. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Oliver Wilder's phone vibrated across his desk, just as he wrapped up the quarterly logistics report at the factory he oversaw. The screen lit up with a name that still made his stomach tighten: Belle. He tapped the message open. Please remember not to come to the rehearsal dinner tonight, and definitely not the wedding tomorrow. I've explained this already. He blinked, reading it again and again. The words didn't change. His fingers curled around the phone, his pulse quickening. He shoved back from the desk, grabbed his coat, and stormed toward the exit. Grabbing an early lunch, Marcy, he called to his assistant without slowing down. I'll be back soon. The 15-minute drive home dragged endlessly, every stoplight like a taunt. By the time he parked in front of their house, his knuckles had blanched. Inside, Belle stood in the kitchen, arranging white lilies in a vase like nothing was wrong. Her blonde ponytail was immaculate, her ivory blouse tucked into pressed slacks. She looked like a magazine ad for upper-middle-class perfection. Oliver held up his phone like it was evidence. You want to tell me what this is? Lainey's wedding? I'm not supposed to show up? She didn't glance up from her flowers. You read the message. We've talked about this. No, we haven't. He stepped forward, his voice tight. Your sister is getting married, and now I'm just not invited? She finally looked at him. Her eyes were the same cold blue as the china plates they never used. Lainey wants it to be intimate, just family. And Conrad's parents are strict about who attends. Just family? Oliver echoed, voice climbing. I've been your husband for 8 years. You barely spoke to Lainey for the last 3. She slid a rose into the center of the arrangement and tilted her head, examining it like the conversation bored her. You skipped the last 2 holidays with my parents, and your dad humiliated me the one before that. Because he called. Your job meaningless in front of a dozen people. Oliver's jaw clenched. I was supposed to let that slide? You could have dealt with it privately, she said, finally turning to him fully. Like a grown man. Instead, you argued with him in front of the whole room. Because he deserved it, Oliver shot back. But this isn't about that. Is my name even on the guest list? Belle hesitated. Just a second. That was all the confirmation he needed. It's not, is it? He said, voice low. The betrayal settled in his gut like ice. Oliver, she sighed, picking up her purse from the granite counter. Don't make this a bigger deal than it is. The bishops are old Asheville money. This wedding matters. For Lainey, for us, for the future. I'm her maid of honor. I can't afford distractions. Distractions, he repeated bitterly, a hollow laugh escaping. You mean me. You're afraid I'll embarrass you. Again. She raised one sculpted brow. Am I wrong? Like at your dad's retirement party? Oliver snapped. When he told a room full of executives you married beneath you? Belle met his stare, unblinking. You could have smiled, walked away, acted with class. Class, Oliver echoed, his voice a whisper now, all the more dangerous for it. Right. Because this family thing, it's all about appearances. Belle glanced at her watch. She had a 1 appointment, then was meeting Lainey at the venue. As she moved toward the door, Oliver stepped into her path. So that's it? I'm just completely excluded from your sister-in-law's wedding? And that doesn't bother you? She sighed. It's one weekend, Oliver. Can't you just let it go? She tried to step around him. No luck. He didn't budge. And what about your dignity, Belle? How do you stand there and let them treat your husband like he doesn't even exist? She stopped, steadied her voice. I've bent over backwards trying to make peace between you and my family, but you fight me every step. You won't even try to meet them halfway. Because I won't put on a fake smile for people who look down their noses at me. His tone was sharp. That fake smile is exactly why you're not welcome. Her eyes locked with his. Now move. I don't have time for this. He stepped aside, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might crack. Go ahead, Belle. Go enjoy the lavish wedding with the family that actually counts to you. Just know this. She froze at the door. He wasn't yelling. That almost made it worse. I remember everything. And I don't do forgiveness. Her hand hesitated on the doorknob. Is that supposed to scare me? No, he said, turning away. It's just the truth. Ask anyone who knows me. She left without another word. The door closed behind her with a soft click, yet somehow it echoed like a slammed gate in his chest. Oliver knew showing up would be a mistake. A public snub was almost guaranteed. But some stubborn part of him, a fire that refused to go out, pushed him to the Biltmore estate anyway. The next evening, as expensive sedans rolled up the circular drive, he eased his old Jeep into a side spot, adjusted his tie, and stepped out. He wore his best suit, a fitted charcoal one Belle used to say made his eyes look stormy. His black hair was combed smooth, his beard perfectly edged. If they were going to kick him out, they'd do it while he looked like a man worth regretting. The estate shimmered under thousands of soft white lights. Uniformed staff ushered in guests with polite efficiency. Oliver walked like he owned the place. "Evening, sir," said a young man holding a tablet at the checkpoint. "May I get your name?" "Oliver Wilder." The attendant scrolled, his face tightening. "Apologies, sir. You're not on the list. I'm Belle Wilder's husband. She's the maid of honor." "One moment." The man stepped away, murmuring into a discreet headset. Oliver stood tall, refusing to shift or shrink. Eyes drifted toward him, some familiar, some vaguely known. He caught a few whispers, some hushed smirks. Belle's father's associates, neighbors who'd heard rumors, distant relatives looking for a scene. The murmuring buzzed like static in his ears. Still, he didn't flinch. The young staffer returned, flanked by a distinguished man in a tailored navy suit. "Mr. Wilder," the man began, his voice low and polished. "I'm the event coordinator. I'm afraid there's been a complication. You're not on the guest list." The coordinator's voice was polite but unyielding. "My wife is in the bridal party," Oliver replied calmly. "That should count for something, shouldn't it?" "I understand, sir, but the instructions were explicit. Maybe there was a mix-up with the RSVP." Oliver's gaze shifted as Belle emerged, her bridesmaid gown, a soft blue that matched her eyes, fluttering with each step. Just behind her was Lainey, not in her wedding dress yet, but wearing a silky white robe stitched with bride across the back. "Oliver." Belle's voice tightened like a wire. "What are you doing here?" "I came to support my wife at her sister's wedding," he said, keeping his tone steady. Though apparently there's some confusion at the door. Lainey glided forward, her smile thin and brittle. "Didn't Belle tell you? We had to make some hard decisions. The venue has a strict head count." Oliver glanced past the event planner toward the expansive grounds. "Clearly, space is a premium." "It's not personal," Lainey added quickly. "We just had to be selective. Unfortunately, your spot didn't make the final cut." Oliver gave a slow nod, letting the insult land without flinching. Belle tugged his arm, drawing him a few steps away from the others. "Please don't do this," she murmured. "Not today." "Do what?" he asked quietly. "I came to my sister-in-law's wedding. You're the ones making it dramatic. You knew you weren't invited. You showed up just to cause a scene." "And I've caused one," he replied. Gently, he unhooked her hand from his sleeve. "Enjoy the evening with your actual family, Belle." He turned away. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a familiar face in the incoming guests. Jack Dawson, an old friend from high school. Jack's expression flickered from surprise to confusion as he watched Oliver walk away. Oliver acknowledged him with a subtle nod, then kept moving. He didn't glance back. In the rearview mirror, he caught one last glimpse of Belle returning to the venue, head held high, face unreadable. Lainey lingered at the entrance wearing a satisfied little smirk before disappearing inside. The sting of rejection settled deep in Oliver's chest, but beneath it was something sharper, cold, intentional, a plan forming one bitter mile at a time. He drove on, leaving the glittering estate behind, heading into the night. The roads thinned and twisted through the Carolina mountains, familiar terrain. No GPS needed, just muscle memory. Eventually he turned onto a hidden gravel path, one he hadn't driven in years, winding through trees and fog. At last Jack's cabin appeared, stone and timber, sturdy against the slope of the mountain. One light glowed inside, warm against the dusk. Oliver parked beside a dusty pickup and sat for a moment in the stillness. Then the front door swung open. Jack stood there, holding a bottle of bourbon like he'd been expecting company. "New, you might show," he said gruffly. Jack was 40 now, still carrying the frame of the soldier he'd once been, close-cut gray-flecked hair, sharp eyes that saw more than they let on. "Didn't expect to see you at the wedding, or rather see you leaving it early," Oliver muttered, stepping inside. "Mind pouring a drink for someone who wasn't exactly on the guest list?" Jack moved aside and nodded toward the kitchen. Always. The cabin had a rugged charm, modest but solid. A massive stone fireplace anchored the far wall. A weathered leather sofa sat opposite it, clearly broken in by time and stories. One wall was covered in shelves, mostly nonfiction, war history, strategy, personal accounts from soldiers. The kitchenette was compact but efficient, opening into a small dining space where a heavy oak table took center stage. Jack poured 2 fingers of bourbon into wide glasses and slid one across the table. "Let's hear it." Oliver took a slow sip, wincing as the heat crawled down his chest. "Wasn't invited to Laney's wedding. My own damn sister-in-law. Belle didn't say a word. Just went along with it like I was nobody." Jack's mouth tightened. The Caldwells always had a way of looking down on everyone else, I remember. He'd grown up in Asheville, too. Known the Caldwells nearly as long as Oliver had. Oliver stared into his glass. "Belle. Man, she's done this before. Last Christmas they had a fancy dinner at the country club. Told me last minute it was just immediate family. Found out later her cousins from Charlotte were there. And you know what? She expected me to just shrug it off. I take it you didn't." I asked her why. She said I was being dramatic. Said her family was tired of how I make things difficult. He emptied the glass in one gulp. "I guess I just don't fit in with their polished, polite world." Jack silently refilled his glass. "What kind of people are we talking about? The kind born with everything handed to them?" Oliver let out a sharp, hollow laugh. "Exactly. I move freight. I solve supply chain problems, no silver spoon, no legacy name." "But you built something," Jack said firmly. "They wouldn't last a week doing what you do. They've lived their whole lives on autopilot, no pressure, no failure." Oliver shook his head. "Belle says I could go further if I just played along, laugh at their jokes, pretend I don't hear the digs about working-class grit." Jack leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You remember senior year? That day you stood up for Derek Foster. Bunch of rich kids were picking on him. You didn't care who their parents were. You just did what was right. That was a long time ago. But that guy, he wouldn't put up with this crap. Not even from his wife." Oliver stood, the bourbon firing up his chest again as he started pacing the room. "I've spent 8 years trying to keep the peace, bite my tongue, play nice, be the bigger man. And what do I get? Shut out of family events, invisible to people who should have my back." Jack didn't answer. He didn't have to. Oliver stopped in his tracks. "You know what burns the most? Belle didn't even hesitate. She just let it happen. Didn't defend me, didn't question it, just left me behind." Jack's voice dropped low. "So what now?" Oliver's fists clenched, the sting of betrayal sharpening into purpose. "I don't have a plan yet," he said slowly. "But this ends now. The dismissiveness, the silence, the pretending I don't matter." Jack's expression darkened with approval. "Then maybe it's time they learned who they're dealing with." They talked deep into the night. At first it was old stories, senior pranks, teachers they hated, fights they'd forgotten. Then it shifted. Life since graduation. Jack had spent 15 years in the Army, most of that with Special Forces. He came back to Asheville, bought this cabin with his savings, and now did private security. Quiet, efficient, respected. Oliver listened, and for the first time in a long while he stopped feeling like the outsider. "Caught a glimpse of you slipping out of the wedding," Oliver said, voice low. "Got anything for an uninvited guest?" Jack stepped aside, the door creaking softly behind him. Always. The cabin was modest but warm. A stone hearth took center stage along the far wall, flanked by a rugged leather couch that had seen better days. Bookshelves packed with old war, journals and biographies lined the side. The kitchen was tucked in, compact and efficient, opening into a dining nook anchored by a solid oak table. Jack poured 2 generous fingers of bourbon, nudging one toward Oliver. "Spill it." Oliver took a gulp, the liquor cutting sharp on the way down. "They didn't invite me to my own sister-in-law's wedding." Belle stood by and said nothing. Jack scoffed. "The Caldwells? That family's had a superiority complex since high school. He would know. He'd grown up in Asheville, too. He'd seen the Caldwells for what they really were. Thin smiles and thick privilege." Oliver's grip tightened on his phone. "There's more. His name's Evan Mercer, investment firm guy. Laney interned there last summer. They left together, after the rehearsal dinner. My sous chef lives in his building, saw her leaving late." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Any chance your guy snapped a pic? What about building security footage?" "I can ask," Oliver said. "But Jack, I'm not chasing rumors. I'm building a case, a reckoning. You still hell-bent on this? They destroyed my business because I wouldn't comp their gala. They mocked me publicly because I don't look the part. It's time they answered for it." Jack nodded slowly. "Harper's business survived them. She started over with real clients, ones who care about work, not image. I'm proud of her. But wouldn't it feel better if the Caldwells couldn't burn anyone else?" A beat of silence. "What do you need?" Oliver's eyes narrowed, calculating. "First, access to the venue." By 3 p.m., Oliver had hit a dozen contacts. Former classmates blackballed by Caldwell connections. Business owners iced out for turning down shady deals. Even a housekeeper who'd been fired after hearing a conversation she wasn't supposed to. Every story was a thread. Each thread led to proof: text messages, email chains, voice recordings. The evidence was damning. Arrogance disguised as charity, deals sealed behind closed doors, lives upended for sport. Jack returned as Oliver was organizing the digital trail. He tossed a glossy magazine onto the table. "Found this in town. You'll want to see it." The cover screamed glamour. Laney Caldwell glowing in white lace, Conrad Bishop by her side, smug. Headline: Asheville's Wedding of the Year. Caldwell and Bishop families unite. Page 12, Jack muttered. Oliver flipped the pages and froze. There was Belle, standing with the bridesmaids, eyes soft, smile perfect. The caption read, "Maid of Honor, Brielle Caldwell Wilder stood proudly by her sister's side." "Caldwell Wilder," Oliver murmured. So she took his name. Officially. "Keep going," Jack said. The article waxed poetic about family unity and quoted Belle. "This union is everything. Conrad's the man we always hoped Laney would find." No mention of Oliver, not even a whisper. "Like I never existed," Oliver muttered. Jack gave a slow nod. "Exactly. But check this." Flip to the reception shots. Oliver turned the page. There was Conrad surrounded by groomsmen, champagne mid-toast. One man, best man, the caption said, held up his phone, showing something to the group. Their faces were a cocktail of shock and poorly hidden laughter. "That's Mark Taylor," Jack said. "I knew him from Basic, ran into him this morning." Oliver leaned in. What was he showing them? Photos. From the rehearsal night. Laney wrapped around someone who wasn't Conrad. Real cozy. Oliver leaned back slowly, the pieces falling into place. The betrayal, the silence, the performance. But now he had something better than anger. He had leverage. So Conrad suspected something wasn't right with his fiancée. Mark mentioned that Conrad laughed it off when rumors surfaced, but later that evening, he was digging, asking pointed, quiet questions. That was all Oliver needed. A blueprint was forming in his head. "Jack," he asked, "how do you feel about crashing a wedding reception?" Jack grinned. "Been waiting for the invite." They spent the rest of the day and most of the night fine-tuning a plan that wasn't about public drama or confrontation. It would be precision. Cold, undeniable truth delivered with elegance. Around midnight, Oliver messaged Belle. "Crashing. At a buddy's, need space, don't wait up." Her reply came instantly. "We need to talk about your behavior, come home tomorrow." He didn't answer, just turned off the phone and let the silence speak for itself. By sunrise, Oliver was seated in a corner booth at a rundown diner, sipping burnt coffee. Harper slid into the seat across from him, flanked by a woman in a chef's coat, young, sharp-eyed. "This is Zoe, my sous chef," Harper said. Zoe wordlessly passed a USB drive across the table. "Security footage from my apartment building," she said. "Shows Lainey and Evan coming and going. Time-stamped, high-res. 3 separate nights in the last 30 days. One of them just 2 days before the wedding," Harper added. Oliver clenched the drive in his fist. "You two are lifesavers now. About that reception tomorrow night," Harper smirked. "Handled it yesterday. Catering company's short on staff, so I offered a few of my people. Jack and I will be in uniform. Blending right in." Oliver raised a brow. "And me?" Harper slid an embossed envelope toward him. "Ryan, Conrad's cousin, just came down with food poisoning, couldn't make it. The bishop's already paid for his seat." Oliver examined the invitation. "Where'd you get this?" Harper's eyes sparkled. "Ryan's girlfriend is my college roommate. She hates the Bishop clan. Happy to help." Oliver nodded, impressed. "This is solid, but we still need something that leaves no room for denial, something the family can't spin." Zoe hesitated, then unlocked her phone. "Didn't know if I should show you this." She passed the screen to Oliver. A text thread between Lainey and Evan popped up, dated a week before the ceremony. It wasn't vague. It was graphic. There was no ambiguity. Then Lainey's final message: "Conrad's money makes him useful in public, but you're the one I want in private." Oliver's gaze snapped up. "How'd you get this?" Zoe sighed. "Evan left his phone on the bar. My roommate works there." She saw Lainey's name flash across the screen. Curiosity got the best of her. She shrugged. "Service industry knows everything. The Caldwells don't have many fans." Oliver tapped the screen. "Can I get a copy of this?" Zoe nodded. "It's already on the USB." As they rose to leave, Harper touched Oliver's arm. "Make it sting. That family's wrecked too many lives." "I will," Oliver said, eyes steady. "This time they don't get to walk away clean." By this time tomorrow, the Caldwells wouldn't be able to hurt anyone ever again. The wedding reception was being held at the Bishop family's secluded estate, perched above the Blue Ridge Mountains. Security was tight, intimidating even, but Oliver's borrowed invitation got him past the main gate without a hitch. He wore a tailored navy suit, the very shade Belle used to claim made him look dull, but he wore it now like armor. He moved with the kind of ease that made the event staff assume he belonged. Jack had arrived much earlier with the catering crew, blending in effortlessly in his server's uniform as he maneuvered through the sea of guests with trays of champagne. Their eyes locked across the ballroom. Jack gave a slight nod. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Oliver stationed himself near a floral pillar in the far corner, watching. At the head table sat Lainey and Conrad, she in her pristine wedding gown, he in a tux that probably cost more than Oliver made in 6 months. They wore their smiles like masks. But Oliver saw the tension in Conrad's jaw, the way his eyes occasionally darted toward his bride with a trace of doubt. Belle sat at their table too, laughing at some smug joke her father made. She hadn't noticed Oliver yet. Perfect. He wanted that moment to be his. A server, one of the real ones, approached Conrad and quietly handed him a note. The groom read it, stiffened, then rose from the table and walked out of the ballroom. Right on cue. 5 minutes later, Belle's phone buzzed. She read a message, face tightening, and stood with that fluid, practiced grace only years of debutante, balls and yacht club functions could teach. She followed the same path Conrad had taken. Oliver waited half a minute, then slipped out behind her. He found them exactly where he knew they'd be, inside a private study just off the hallway. Conrad was holding his phone out toward Belle, his voice low but slicing through the air. Then explain this. It's from last week, Belle. Oliver cleared his throat from the doorway. Hope I'm not interrupting. They both turned. Belle went white. Oliver, what the hell are you doing here? I got an invitation, he said, holding up the ivory card between his fingers. Well, sort of. Conrad's gaze darkened. You're Oliver, the husband, the one who didn't make the guest list. That's me, Oliver replied as he stepped inside and shut the door behind him. Guess you're starting to have second thoughts about the bride? Conrad's jaw flexed. You know something I don't? Oh, I know plenty. Like the fact that your wife was with another man less than 48 hours before she walked down the aisle. Belle stepped in fast, hands out like a barrier. Oliver, stop. This is exactly why you weren't invited. You always stir up trouble. Trouble? Oliver chuckled. A cold, jagged sound. You mean the truth? Because let's not kid ourselves. The chaos didn't start with me walking through that door. I'm just the guy bringing it into the light. What truth? Conrad snapped. Oliver pulled out his phone. Let's start with the basics. Laney's been seeing Evan Mercer. For months. He tapped the screen. A folder opened. Surveillance footage. Saved texts and photos. Caught on the cameras outside my apartment. Texts, lunches, hotels, and my personal favorite. He landed on the final screenshot. A damning one. Laney's voice message. Played on speaker. Her tone flippant as she confessed that being seen with him in public was a small price to pay for his family's fortune. Conrad snatched the phone, scrolling through the proof, his jaw tightening with each swipe. Where the hell did this come from? People talk, Oliver replied coolly. Especially those who've been burned by the Caldwells. Oliver turned to Belle. Were you aware of Laney's little extracurriculars? Absolutely not, she shot back. And I'm not buying this. Could all be doctored. The security footage, the timestamps, the texts from her personal phone. Oliver's voice was calm but firm. You can bury your head in the sand, Belle, but the facts don't lie. Conrad handed the phone back with a look that could freeze fire. Is anyone else in the loop on this? He asked quietly. Not yet, Oliver answered. But there's a backup, a USB loaded with everything. Right now it's in Jack Dawson's pocket. He's serving drinks to your father as we speak. Belle's brows knitted. Jack Dawson? Isn't he working for Harper Bell now? Oliver smirked. Exactly. You remember Harper, the caterer your mother tried to humiliate when she refused to work her charity event for free? Conrad exhaled, sharply, fingers raking through his perfect hair. So what is it? You want cash? Oliver laughed, but it wasn't amused. I don't want your money, Conrad. I want the truth out there. About Laney. About your family's habit of stepping on anyone they think is beneath them. I want the mask to come off. You'll wreck Laney, Belle said, her voice laced with panic. And that's your goal? What I want, Oliver said in a voice so soft it forced silence, is accountability. Just once. Conrad stood still, processing. Then he nodded once. I want that USB. Oliver shook his head. Not that easy. Make it easy, Conrad said, steel in his voice. This is personal. Laney is my problem. I'll deal with it. First in private, then in the light. Oliver studied him for a beat. And what's that supposed to look like? It means the Bishop name doesn't tolerate betrayal, and we don't air our mess unless we've cleaned it up ourselves. Fair, Oliver said, stepping back. Then I'll tell Jack to walk the drive straight to your father. I imagine he deserves to know too. Conrad's expression darkened. He does. Belle grabbed Oliver's arm in desperation. You can't do this. You'll blow everything apart. I didn't blow anything up, he replied, prying her hand from his sleeve. Lainey did when she decided I wasn't worth loyalty. And you? You helped her hide it. You stood by while they erased me from your lives. This is cruel, she whispered. No, Oliver said. This is justice. The kind that doesn't knock. He pulled out his phone, tapped a message. Deliver the drive to Bishop Sr. in the VIP lounge. A beat later, Conrad's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then his features hardened like stone. He's seen it, he said flatly. My father wants a word. Now. Oliver gave him a nod. Then you better not keep him waiting. Family comes first, right? Conrad didn't say another word. He just turned and walked out, leaving Oliver and Belle alone. She rounded on him the second the door clicked shut. Why are you doing this? Her voice cracked. Oliver didn't flinch. Because I've spent 8 years watching you choose them over me. Every snide comment, every cold shoulder from your family. You let it happen. You let them belittle me like I didn't belong, like I was some stray you brought home. And yesterday, he continued, voice even but sharp, when they shut me out of your sister's wedding, you stood there like a statue. No outrage, no defense. It wasn't my decision, she murmured, eyes wet. But you didn't fight. You accepted it, he cut in. Same as always. Just like when they've insulted my background, ignored my achievements, treated me like an outsider. And you let them, every damn time. Tears were falling now. I tried to keep the peace to make things work. No, Belle, he snapped. You didn't want peace. You wanted me to fit, to fold myself up and slide neatly into their perfect little world. He shook his head, stepping back. And when I wouldn't change who I am, you picked them again and again. Oliver, please, she pleaded, voice breaking. We can fix this. He paused, just long enough to look at her. Really look. The woman he married, still flawless on the outside, elegant, composed, lovely but empty, utterly vacant where it counted. No, Belle, he said quietly. We can't. Then he walked out, leaving her alone in the dim light of the study. Back in the ballroom, the air had shifted. Whispers clustered like storm clouds. Conrad was gone. But his father, Bishop Sr., stood by the head table, USB in hand, deep, in conversation with the wedding planner. Jack sidled up beside Oliver, now out of his server's disguise. It's done. Bishop's got the footage. Where's Conrad? Oliver asked. Talking to Lainey, Jack said, smirking. She tried to deny it at first, then blamed the stress, and eventually just broke down crying. Real soap opera stuff. Anyone? See you? Just Bishop Sr. Told him I was doing routine security and stumbled across the evidence. He bought it. Oliver gave a tight nod. Good. A commotion at the ballroom's entrance broke their focus. Conrad emerged from a side corridor, face hard as granite. Lainey trailed behind, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her mother fluttering, anxiously in her wake. What's going on? Someone whispered nearby. I think the groom just found out his bride's been cheating, the man replied, loud enough for others to hear. The rumor shot through the room like a match to dry leaves. Without hesitation, Conrad marched straight to the officiant who'd led the ceremony hours earlier. They exchanged a few quiet words. The officiant's expression fell. He turned to the crowd, raising his voice above the growing buzz. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been informed of a change in circumstance. The ceremony performed today will not be submitted for legal recording. He paused. To put it plainly, the marriage is annulled. It will not be recognized. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Lainey's mother wobbled, then sank into a chair, hand clutched to her chest like something vital had snapped. Lainey stood frozen in place, her pristine white dress now little more than a costume, in a collapsing fairy tale. From the hallway, Bela stormed in, her eyes immediately finding Oliver and Jack, who lingered quietly by the far wall. She stomped toward them, fury crackling with every step. Is this what you wanted? She snapped. You've destroyed my sister's life. Oliver didn't flinch. She destroyed it herself, he said coolly. All I did was take the mask off. Now everyone sees her for who she really is. And your mother? She's shattered. Asheville's going to feed on this for months. Maybe that's exactly what they need, Jack cut in, his voice low but steady. A good, hard look in the mirror. Bela narrowed her eyes. And you? I should have known you'd be part of this circus. You always brought out the worst in him. Jack tilted his head. Or maybe the best? The part that finally fights back. The guy who stopped letting people treat him like furniture. The guy I actually liked back in high school. Oliver placed a steadying hand on Jack's shoulder. We're done here. Let's go. They turned to leave, but Conrad stepped into their path. Wilder, he said. Just that. Jack kept walking, giving them space. Oliver paused. Thanks, Conrad said. Just one word, but heavy with meaning. For the proof. For not letting it go. Finding out later when there were kids in the picture would have been worse. You spared me that. Oliver nodded. No one deserves to be lied to like that. Conrad studied him. You're not who they said you were. Laney and Bella painted a very different picture. I usually am, Oliver replied. A faint smile tugged at Conrad's lips. Well, for what it's worth, I would have invited you. To the real wedding. One where truth actually means something. Oliver gave a respectful nod and turned to join Jack, who waited just outside. The evening air met them with a crisp, grounding chill. The mountain ahead loomed steady and unmoved, like a silent witness. As they reached Jack's truck, laughter burst from Jack's chest. What? Oliver asked. Just imagining the Caldwells trying to explain this disaster to their yacht club pals. Jack grinned. Man, you executed that like a surgeon. Oliver felt something lift from inside him. A heaviness he'd grown so used to, he'd forgotten it was there. Yeah, he said softly. It was. As they pulled away from the estate, Oliver glanced once over his shoulder. The manor behind them still buzzed with the fallout. For a moment he thought he saw Bella on the upper balcony, watching them disappear into the night. Or maybe it was just the shadows playing tricks. He crashed at Jack's cabin again that night. Phone turned off, the world put on hold. They sat out on the porch, beers in hand, replaying every moment of the unraveling. Quiet laughter. Deep satisfaction. When her mom fainted, Jack chuckled. That was art, pure performance art. Oliver grinned. You remember how she acted when Laney didn't make cheer captain? Called the school board, demanded a full inquiry. Some folks go their whole lives without ever tasting consequences, Jack said. Oliver raised his bottle. Until they choke on 'em. Morning broke clear and still, the mountain bathed in golden light, like the world had reset cleaner somehow. Oliver turned his phone back on. Instantly, 27 missed calls from Belle lit up the screen, followed by a dozen from her parents, and even one from Conrad. The texts were worse, a frantic blend of rage, pleas, and thinly veiled threats. The last one read, We need to talk. I'm home. Come back and let's fix this. Jack, watching him scroll, asked, You going to deal with the fallout? Oliver nodded, jaw tight. Time to end this the right way. He stood up, added, Save me a cold one, and walked out. The long drive back to Asheville gave him clarity. By the time he turned into the driveway of the house he once called home, he wasn't angry anymore. Just done. Belle was in the living room, frozen in the same clothes from the night before. Her makeup had long faded, and her eyes were swollen. Whether from crying or lack of sleep, it didn't matter now. You came back, she said quietly, like stating it would somehow anchor him. Only to talk, Oliver replied flatly, and to grab a few things. She stood up, walking toward him cautiously. What happened last night? Maybe it needed to happen. It did, he said, cutting her off. Everything, the truth about Laney, your family, all of it, it was overdue. She inched closer, trying to sound calm. I know you felt betrayed, not being invited to the wedding. I should have fought harder. But what you did, publicly humiliating Lainey like that, destroying her marriage? No, Oliver snapped. Lainey wrecked her own marriage the second she chose to cheat on Conrad. I just held up the mirror. Her voice grew sharp. You could have told him in private. You didn't need to humiliate the family like that, not in front of the entire city. Oliver chuckled bitterly. You mean your circle, the people your family worships. You think I care about impressing the same folks who've disrespected me for 8 years? She flinched at that. That's not fair. Isn't it? Oliver stepped closer. What's unfair is being invisible unless I'm playing your family's puppet. What's unfair is watching my own wife sit back while they undermine me again and again. Belle crossed her arms, tone defensive. My family accepted you. They tolerated me, Oliver shot back. And only when I stayed in my lane. He moved past her toward the stairs. I'm getting my clothes. I'll be back later for the rest. She followed, desperate. You're walking out over one damn wedding invitation? He stopped halfway up the stairs and turned slowly. No, Belle. I'm walking away because every time you've had to choose between me and them, you picked them. Every single time. For 8 years. Her mouth opened. Closed. Then opened again. That's not true. I've defended you. Name one time, he challenged. One time you stood between me and their judgment. One time you said, enough. He's my husband. She looked panicked now. I told my dad to quit insulting your job, remember? That night at the dinner party, I confronted him. And what happened? Oliver asked coldly. He gave you the silent treatment for 6 months. And you think I'm the one making things difficult? Oliver shot back. Her tone shifted, syrupy sweet, the kind she used when she was trying to manipulate. We can fix this, she pleaded. Therapy, a reset. We just need a clean slate. It's too late for that, he said firmly. Her face hardened, eyes sharp now. If you walk out that door, you'll regret it. My family still holds weight. In this town. Your career, is that a threat? A reality check, she said, chin high. The Caldwell name matters here. Oh, it matters, he agreed, his voice steady. More than you know. He turned and climbed the stairs without another word, grabbed a bag and packed with practiced calm. When he came back down, Belle was whispering into the phone. She ended the call abruptly when she noticed him. That was my father, she said quickly. He wants to sit down and talk. Options. Options? He echoed. Ways to manage this quietly. Clean up the mess. Oliver dropped the bag by the front door. There's no mess. I filed for divorce. Her face went pale. You did? What? This morning. Online. My attorney will be reaching out to yours tomorrow. You filed without even speaking to me? There was nothing left to say, he replied. Not after your family barred me from your cousin's wedding. Not after you made sure I was conveniently left out of Christmas dinner, or every other time you stood by while they humiliated me. He hoisted the bag again and met her stunned gaze. And just so we're clear, I've got receipts, Belle. Every underhanded text, every dollar you funneled from our shared account into your hidden one, and all those conversations you had with your parents when you thought I wasn't listening, recorded. You've been spying on me? She shrieked. I've been safeguarding myself, he said coolly. Because I knew eventually you'd show your hand. I just wasn't sure when. I'll fight this, she snarled. I'll bleed you dry. You're welcome to try. He moved to the door, turning back briefly. But I think you'll find the Caldwell name isn't as bulletproof as it used to be. Meaning? Her voice cracked. Meaning I know about your dad's dirty dealings, how he's bullied small businesses, pulled strings to silence rivals, and how your mother's whispered lies have ruined people's lives. He put his hand on the doorknob. I'd prefer not to expose any of it, but if you force my hand, I won't hesitate. You wouldn't, she breathed. Not after what I did last night. Want to test that theory? She looked at him, really looked as if waking from a delusion. For the first time, she saw a man she couldn't bend or break. "Who are you?" she whispered. "The same man I've always been. You just never took the time to see past your reflection." He opened the door and stepped out. "My lawyer will be in touch." From behind, her voice cracked with panic. "You can't just walk away from 8 years." He paused at the car, turned once and said, "Watch me." Oliver stepped back into Jack's remote cabin, but the satisfaction he expected never came. 8 years of marriage had unraveled in one brutal weekend. It was the right call, he knew that. Still, the silence that followed felt like standing in the ruins of a once sacred place. Jack didn't pry. He just passed Oliver a cold beer, flipped on the Yankees game, and together they let the quiet mountain dusk absorb whatever words neither was ready to speak. Early the next day, Oliver's phone buzzed. Gerald Caldwell. He let it ring. Again. Then again. 4th time. "Persistent guy," Jack muttered from the kitchen. "Always has been," Oliver replied before finally answering. "Gerald, what can I do for you?" Gerald's voice lacked its usual commanding smugness. "We need to talk, my office." Oliver didn't flinch. "Already filed the divorce papers." "My lawyer—" "This isn't about the divorce," Gerald interrupted. "It's about the evidence you have on me, on my wife, the company." Oliver locked eyes with Jack across the room, sensing his friend's unspoken question. "What about it?" "I want to make a deal." "I'm listening." "Come to my office." "Not happening. Noon. Lexington Cafe." A long pause. Then a clipped, "Fine." By the time Oliver arrived, the cafe was humming with life. Gerald already sat rigidly in the far corner, clearly out of place. His sharp suit and superior posture clashed with the relaxed students and tech workers around him. He didn't stand, didn't offer his hand. "Sit," he said flatly. Oliver took his time ordering a black coffee, then lowered himself across from his former father-in-law. "You wanted a conversation, so talk. Tell me what you want to keep this quiet." "Define this," Oliver replied coolly. Gerald's jaw flexed. "Don't be clever. You know what? The files, the recordings, my business, my wife's extracurriculars." Oliver took a sip, eyes steady. "I'm not looking to make a mess, Gerald, unless you make me." "What's that supposed to mean?" "I want a clean split. Fair asset division. No attacks on my name, no behind-the-scenes sabotage. You back off, so do I." Gerald's eyes narrowed into slits. "And Leniani? The damage you've done to her prospects?" "Leniani torched her own future," Oliver said without flinching. "But I'm not out to humiliate her. What she and Conrad decide to do now, that's their mess." Gerald's mask of control cracked. "Conrad's father cut ties. 20 years of partnership gone because of you." Oliver didn't blink. "Actions have consequences, Gerald. Something your clan has always managed to dodge until now." For a heartbeat, Gerald's true face emerged, the high-handed puppet master who once looked at Oliver like he was mud on his imported rug. "You think this is a win?" he sneered. "You're nothing without the Caldwell name." Oliver stood, slowly, sliding his untouched coffee aside. "Then I guess it's a good thing I stopped needing your name a long time ago. Just another corporate puppet who lucked into marrying above his rank." Oliver chuckled, not out of spite, but genuine disbelief. "That's where you've got it twisted, Gerald. I never rode your coattails. Everything I've accomplished came from grit, not your last name." Gerald leaned forward, voice low but laced with threat. "Then you won't mind when I make a few calls." Oliver didn't flinch. "Dial away," he said steadily. "Just know, for every call you make, I'll make one too. And I've got receipts, Gerald, real ones, records, emails, the kind that show exactly how the great Gerald Caldwell bullies small businesses, manipulates deals, and leans on favors like a crutch." Gerald's jaw tightened, his complexion reddening. "You wouldn't dare." Oliver reached into his pocket and dropped a few bills beside his untouched coffee. "Expect a visit from my attorney." You'll get a standard split, nothing more, nothing less. Make sure Belle signs without dragging this out and we can all move on cleanly. Gerald narrowed his eyes. And if she doesn't? Oliver's tone stayed calm, firm. Then I start dialing too. First stop, State Business Ethics Committee. Word is, they're itching to expose people like you who prey on the little guys. Gerald's confidence seemed to crack then, the smugness slipping from his face. For the first time in years, Oliver saw something real in the man's expression. Fear. You've changed, Gerald muttered. No, Oliver said quietly. I've just stopped living by the rules you set. He turned to leave but halted at the door. One last thing. Jack Dawson's opening that outdoor gear shop I told you about. Your golf buddies like to think they're rugged, right? Do them a favor. Send them his way. Call it a peace offering. Gerald stayed frozen at the table, stunned. Oliver walked out lighter than he'd felt in a decade. The confrontation he'd dodged for years was finally behind him, and he hadn't just survived it. He'd reclaimed his power. His phone rang as he reached his car. Rael, he answered. I heard you saw Dad. Her voice was flat, unreadable. Word gets around. What did you say to him? He called me shaken. I told him the truth, Oliver said, that choices come with consequences, that I want this over, clean, that I'm done being intimidated. She was silent for a beat. He told me to sign whatever your lawyer sends. That would be wise. Is that it? That's all you've got to say to me? Oliver exhaled slowly. What do you want, Belle? An apology? I'm sorry it had to end like this. I wish it had gone another way. But we're past that now. I did love you, she said softly. In your own way, he replied. But your way left me hollow. He ended the call before she could say more, started the engine and pulled out of the lot. He didn't look back. He drove north, toward the quiet hills and Jack's cabin, the place where something new was waiting to take shape. 3 months slipped by. October had arrived, draping the Blue Ridge Mountains in blazing reds and golds. Oliver now lived in a modest walk-up apartment near downtown Asheville, just close enough that he walked to work most days, letting the crisp air remind him he was free. The divorce papers had been signed faster than anyone expected. Gerald Caldwell clearly couldn't wait to sweep the whole ordeal under the rug. Oliver was sipping coffee at a quiet street cafe when he noticed Tess Wilder marching toward him, her heels tapping purposefully on the pavement. At 35, Tess was every bit the no-nonsense community college advisor she'd always been, her sharp practicality constantly clashing with Belle's polished pretense. There you are, she said, sliding into the chair across from him. You've been a damn ghost. You could have called, Oliver said, raising an eyebrow. And let you dodge me? Not a chance. She waved over the server. So, 3 months since you torched your marriage and turned into Asheville's favorite piece of gossip. Planning to tell your sister, or were you hoping I'd get the full story in pieces from strangers? Oliver managed a guilty half-smile. I was gonna call, eventually. Tess accepted her coffee with a muttered thanks. Diane Franklin told me how you exposed Lainey Caldwell as a lying cheat. At her own wedding, no less. Then Mark from the gym fills me in that you're suddenly hanging with Jack Dawson again, and 3 other people casually dropped the bomb that you and Belle split. What the hell, Ollie? Oliver leaned back with a sigh. It's been eventful. No kidding, Tess muttered, giving him a once-over. But you actually look decent, better than you have in a long time. I feel better, Oliver admitted. Good, now spill, and don't hold back. He walked her through it all, getting snubbed from the wedding, the face-off with Gerald, the whole unraveling. Tess didn't interrupt once. Her expression shifted from disbelief to fury, then settled into something like pride. I'm not sorry one bit, she said when he finished. Belle never deserved you, and the Caldwells. They always looked down on you. Still, you should have called. I would have had your back. I know, he said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. But I needed to take care of it on my own. Well, since you clearly missed the fallout, she leaned in with a smirk. The mighty Caldwell name is circling the drain. Lainey skipped town, Charlotte, last I heard, trying to reinvent herself. Belle's still here, but the hospital charity board dropped her like a hot rock. And Gerald? Half his clients are suddenly finding new representation. I wasn't out to ruin them, Oliver said, voice low. You didn't. You just forced them to look in a mirror for once. Tess took a slow sip. So, what now? Besides hiding out in your apartment pretending you're fine? I'm not hiding. When's the last time you went out? Had fun? Talked to someone not wearing a headset? Oliver hesitated. Work had filled the void since the split. Safe, predictable, numb. I've been preoccupied. Well, it's time to change that. Jack Dawson's having his grand opening this weekend. New outdoor supply store. You're coming with me. Don't argue. She stood, slinging her purse over her shoulder. Saturday, 10 sharp. I'll be at your door. And Oliver. Man, it's good having my brother back. The grand opening of Summit Outfitters was beyond packed. The crowd spilled into the parking lot, buzzing with energy. Jack navigated the sea of customers like a pro, showcasing climbing gear, breaking down the science behind hiking boots, exuding the confidence of someone who finally owned his success. Tattoos peeked from beneath his rolled-up sleeves, a quiet defiance to the old judgments. Quite the crowd, Oliver said as Jack finally slipped away from a group and joined him and Tess. Yeah, crazy, right? Who knew Asheville had room for another gear shop? Jack laughed. Guess it helps when your first big client is the Bishops. The Bishops? Tess blinked in surprise. Conrad's dad brought his whole executive team in last week, kitted them out for a corporate retreat. Jack gestured toward a photo wall lined with smiling customers. Front and center was Conrad Bishop Sr., beaming beside premium backpack displays. Looks like Gerald Caldwell took my advice, Oliver noted. Or maybe the Bishops actually recognize quality when they see it. Jack's smile softened into something more serious. Look, I couldn't have pulled this off without your investment. The bank covered the stock, but this location? The build-out? That was you. It was a strategic investment, Oliver interrupted. This town's crawling with climbers and hikers who love to spend. You'll turn a profit inside 12 months. Tess gave her brother a curious look. You funded Jack's store? Silent partner, Oliver confirmed with a small nod. Very silent. I just help with logistics and supplier contacts. Jack runs the whole show. Well, damn, Tess said, studying her brother like he was someone new. Look at you making boss moves. The rest of the day blurred by in a whirl of hellos, gear demos, and business cards. What surprised Oliver most was that people weren't cornering him to rehash the divorce scandal or the wedding debacle. They wanted to talk shop, inventory management, transport lanes, even potential partnerships. As the sun dipped low and the crowd began to thin, a familiar figure stepped into the entrance. Not the elder bishop, but the younger, Conrad himself, Lainey's almost husband. His eyes landed on Oliver instantly and he started weaving through the aisles. Wilder, Conrad said, reaching out a hand. Bishop, Oliver replied, gripping it firmly. Didn't expect to see you here. Dad's been raving about this place nonstop. Thought I should see it for myself. He scanned the space. Solid setup. Jack's got real instincts. He does, Oliver agreed. Conrad leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. I never really got to thank you. For the wedding and for telling the truth, you don't have to. Yeah, I do. There was sincerity in his eyes, clear and unwavering. You pulled me out of a lifetime of pretending. I owe you. How have you been holding up through everything? Oliver asked. Honestly? Better than I thought. The family took a hit. Social standing's a bit shaky. It's hard to fake a smile when you cancel a wedding during the reception. But our business is holding steady. He hesitated, then added quietly, I heard about you and Emil. I'm sorry, man. Don't be, Oliver said, voice flat but calm. It needed to end. Conrad studied him thoughtfully. I've got a new project brewing. High-end ecotourism. Guided excursions through the mountains with a strong focus on conservation and sustainability. I need someone solid. Someone who knows logistics and can run operations without dropping the ball. Someone I trust. Oliver raised an eyebrow. That sounds promising. Conrad slid a card across the table. Let me buy you dinner next week. No pressure, just a conversation. Oliver turned the card over in his hand. I'll give it some thought. As Conrad walked away, Tess sidled up behind him. Was that Conrad Bishop inviting you to dinner? Business talk, Oliver replied casually. Tess gave him a knowing smirk. Guess sometimes when you burn a bridge, the fire lights up a brand new path. That dinner turned into a few more. The meetings piled up, and before long, Oliver had signed on as a partner in Bishop Eco Adventures. 6 months after the wedding, that never happened. He found himself managing the entire logistics wing of the operation, while Conrad handled outreach and clientele. On a brisk spring morning, Oliver stood inside their freshly leased downtown office, unpacking a box of freshly printed brochures, the air sharp with ink and new beginnings. Tess appeared with 2 paper cups and a bag of pastries, as had become her Thursday tradition. Well, well, she said, offering him coffee. You're now officially Asheville's most eligible divorcee and co-partner to Jack Dawson and Conrad Bishop. Quite the glow-up. Oliver took a sip. Not sure that's the title I was gunning for, but his smile betrayed him. Coming from me, it's a compliment, she said, hopping up to sit on the edge of his desk. How's business with Conrad? Oliver leaned against the windowsill. Better than I expected. He's sharp, driven, and surprisingly grounded. Once you stop looking at the designer shoes, and the guy knows everyone from here to Nashville, doesn't flinch at the Caldwell name either. Tess raised her eyebrows. So you're cool with awkward holiday parties now? He hasn't spoken to the Caldwells since the wedding, Oliver said, shrugging. Neither has his dad. That chapter's closed. She tilted her head, watching him. You look content, like actually at peace. He nodded slowly. I am. And he meant it. The fury and humiliation that had once consumed him had faded, replaced by the quiet pride of building something on his own terms, something no one could take away. His phone buzzed. A message from Jack. Still good for 3? Bringing new climbing. Instructor to meet you. Oliver typed back a quick thumbs up and turned to Tess. We're kicking off a youth initiative. Free climbing classes for low-income kids. Jack's introducing the new coach this afternoon. Tess grinned. Look at you, community hero. Mom would have loved that. Their mother had passed while Tess was still in school. Their father followed a few years later. The mention of her used to sting, but now it felt like a sunbeam. She always told me not to let people walk all over me, Oliver said, a faint smile playing at his lips. Took you 4 decades, but hey, you got there. Tess polished off her croissant and casually dropped, Oh, ran into Belle yesterday. At the farmer's market. Oliver's shoulders stiffened just a touch. How was that civil? Tess asked, her voice low but edged. She actually asked about you. What did you say? I told her the truth, that you're doing well. Building things, moving forward. Tess wiped her palms on her jeans, brushing off the last of her sandwich crumbs. She seemed, I don't know, off. Like she was carrying something heavy. Oliver didn't flinch. She said she's leaving for Charlotte next month, said she needs a reset. Oliver nodded. It's probably for the best. Later that day, just as promised, Jack showed up, trailing a woman in climbing gear who looked like she belonged on a rock face more than in an office. This is Alex, he said, our new climbing coach. She was maybe 28, hands worn from use, posture relaxed but confident. As Jack broke down the youth program plan, Oliver listened, drawn in despite himself. They'll get more than ropes and carabiners, Alex explained. They'll learn how to trust each other. Think under pressure. Push through fear. Exactly, Conrad chimed in, appearing halfway through. He and Alex picked up steam quickly, bouncing ideas, and in that moment, Oliver felt something stir, a feeling he hadn't touched in years. Purpose. It wasn't about outdoing the Caldwells, not anymore. It was about building something that mattered. That would last. Once the meeting ended and Conrad and Alex had headed out, Jack lingered on the porch. He leaned on the railing, fiddling with his keys. "I got a call yesterday," he said, "from Lainey Caldwell." Oliver tilted his head. "Really? What did she want?" "To say sorry for how her family treated me. Said she's in therapy now in Charlotte, trying to deal with her demons." Jack let out a dry chuckle, still stunned. She sounded genuine. Oliver took a breath. "People change." "Sometimes," Jack allowed. Then he pulled an envelope from his jacket. "First quarter profits, your cut. We're ahead of projections." Oliver slid out the check, eyebrows lifting. "Not bad for 3 months." Jack grinned. "Not bad at all. So, what are you going to do with it?" Oliver didn't answer right away, just stared past the porch into the distance. "I've got something in mind, and that idea took form over the next 4 weeks. A modest cabin, not as big as Jack's, but carved from the same kind of wood and intention, built on a quiet patch of land 3 miles away. 3 acres with a stream whispering along the back. The view stretched wide. Open sky, pine ridges, and the blue haze of mountains in the distance. When the last nail was driven, Oliver called Tess and Jack over. They stood on the wraparound porch, cold beers in hand, as the sun bled gold and lavender across the horizon. "It's perfect," Tess breathed. "Yeah," Jack added. "Not bad for a guy who used to push pallets for a living." Oliver laughed quietly, the sound catching in his throat. "I couldn't have done this without you two." He turned toward them. "Jack, your place gave me shelter when I had nowhere. Left. And Tess, you never stopped believing in me, even when I gave you every reason to." "That's what real family does," Tess said, her eyes soft. "Not the kind you're born into, the kind you choose." "To chosen family," Jack said, raising his bottle. And under the fading light they toasted to something deeper than revenge, something reclaimed. A new beginning, carved from the ashes. To real family, Oliver and Tess had toasted. Summer swept into the mountains like a living thing, lush, bright, and humming with promise. Thrived Summit Outfitters had just opened a second outpost, and Bishop Eco Adventures was booked solid through the fall. The youth climbing program had grown to 30 consistent students, kids from all over Asheville scaling the rugged stone faces of the Blue Ridge with newfound strength and pride. But on a quiet Wednesday, while Oliver was combing through inventory spreadsheets in his office, his assistant poked her head in with a curious look. "You've got a visitor, Conrad Bishop Sr." Oliver blinked. "Send him in," he said. Intrigued. He'd crossed paths with the elder bishop at a few regional events, but their interactions had been formal, limited. Today, though, something was different. The man walked in with his usual polished authority, but under it a flicker of restraint. "Wilder," he said, extending a firm hand. "Didn't mean to barge in." "Not a problem," Oliver replied, shaking it and motioning to the seat across from him. "What brings you by?" "It's more about what I can offer you." Bishop Sr. leaned in, voice lower now. "I'm putting together a fundraising gala next month. Conservation initiatives tied to the Blue Ridge. Big names will be there. I want you in that room." Oliver arched a brow. "I'm honored, but why me?" Bishop Sr. held his gaze, eyes sharper now. "Because you're one of the rare ones. Integrity matters, and you've got it." He paused, then said, "What you did with the Caldwells last year, shining a light on Lainey's deception, you spared my son a slow-burning disaster. A marriage built on lies. That took guts." Oliver's jaw tightened. "I just did what I felt was right, and that's exactly the point." Bishop nodded, tone steely. "I respect that. Loyalty, truth, courage. You live by them. That's why I don't just want you at the event. I want you featured, your eco-tourism model. With my son, It's the future, responsible, rooted, and real. The compliment blindsided Oliver. I'm grateful, really. Bishop stood, smoothing his blazer. Don't be grateful, just show up. It's not charity, it's alignment. Real partnerships are forged in shared values. He handed over an ornate invitation. Next month, black tie. Bring someone if you like. As the door shut behind him, Oliver turned the heavy invitation in his hands, tracing the embossed lettering. Just a year ago, he wasn't even welcome at a wedding. Now he was being invited, front and center, at one of Asheville's premier elite gatherings. The irony dripped off the edges. His phone buzzed. A message from Belle. I heard you're attending the Bishop Conservation Gala. I hope my presence won't make things awkward. Mother's on the planning board. Oliver stared at the screen, pulse ticking. It was the first time Belle, or Muntz, had reached out directly since everything fell apart. He typed a few responses, then erased them all. Finally, he wrote, It's a big venue. I'm sure we can both be polite. The reply came fast. I'd like to talk before the event. Maybe coffee? Oliver set the phone face down. He wasn't ready to reopen that door. Not yet. He never imagined the day would come. That evening, as the sky turned a dusky purple and he sat on his porch nursing a glass of bourbon, Oliver's phone lit up with an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Oliver Wilder. Oliver, it's Conrad. Conrad Bishop, came the enthusiastic voice on the other end. Did my dad talk to you today? He did. About the fundraiser, Oliver replied, keeping his tone guarded. Did he bring up the partnership? Conrad asked, a hint of excitement in his voice. Oliver's brows furrowed. No, just the fundraiser, Conrad chuckled. Typical. He leaves the heavy lifting to me. He's stepping down next year, restructuring the whole business. He wants you to partner with us. Not just the ecotourism project. You'd be over 3 companies under the Bishop name. Oliver sat up, nearly spilling his drink. Me? Why? Because you're the best at what you do. Because you made this venture work. And because, in his words, you speak the truth even when it's not convenient. Conrad paused, then added, Also, I may have nudged him a bit. Oliver exhaled slowly. I don't even know what to say. Say yes, come to the fundraiser, sit down with him. This is real, Oliver, bigger than anything you've been offered before. After they hung up, Oliver stayed on the porch, the bourbon forgotten, eyes tracking the slow rise of fireflies from the tall grass. What the Bishop family was offering wasn't just a job. It was everything the Caldwells had flaunted. Wealth, power, legitimacy. But this wasn't about clinging to someone else's success. This time it was about being seen for who he truly was. Just then his phone buzzed again. A message from Belle. I understand if you never want to speak again. Just know, I'm sorry. For how it ended. For all of it. Oliver stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then he erased the message he'd started, blocked her number, and set the phone down. Some doors don't deserve to be reopened. The morning of the Bishop Conservation fundraiser broke crisp and blue. On his porch, coffee warming his hands, Oliver watched the light creep across the mountain ridges. A full year had passed since Laney's wedding, since that final raw confrontation that cracked everything open. The rage that once defined him had faded, replaced by something firmer, self-assurance. That afternoon, Tess pulled up in her Jeep, Jack following in his beat-up truck. They'd both insisted on being there. Look at you, Tess said, stepping out and eyeing him in his tailored tux. You clean up like a CEO. Oliver shrugged. It's just a suit. But the smirk, tugging at his lips, said otherwise. The Easter fundraiser took place at the Biltmore estate, in the same manicured gardens where Laney's wedding had once excluded him. None of them missed the irony as they strode past the gate that used to be shut in his face. Inside, Asheville's high society mingled. CEOs, senators, names passed down through old Southern money. And in the middle of it all stood Conrad, beaming, as he ushered Oliver into circles he'd once been shut out of. Conrad Bishop Sr. made his entrance with theatrical flair, his deep voice cutting through the room as he approached holding 2 champagne flutes. He offered one to Oliver with a grin. "Glad you showed up." "Wouldn't miss it," Oliver replied smoothly. "Your son's been pretty persuasive about this whole partnership thing." Conrad was never one for subtlety. The elder bishop chuckled, scanning the crowd. "Let's hash out the real details later this week. Tonight's for celebration and old ghosts." As the night unfolded, Oliver realized he was drawing far more attention than he'd anticipated. Those same faces that once ignored him at every Caldwell gathering were now approaching with handshakes and compliments, talking investments, philanthropy, even dropping hints about joint ventures. It was surreal. All because Conrad Bishop Sr. had stood before everyone earlier and praised Oliver by name. He was mid-conversation with the mayor when his eyes caught Gerald Caldwell's from across the ballroom. Their gazes locked. Gerald gave him the smallest of nods, cold, calculated. Oliver returned it just as curtly. No words exchanged, but the message was clear. They were no longer playing the same game. Later, as the party hummed behind him, Oliver stepped out onto the stone terrace, needing a breath of quiet. That's when he heard the voice. Familiar. Smirking. Quite the turnaround, huh? Turning, he found Conrad Bishop Jr. leaning casually against the balustrade, the city lights reflecting in his glass. "What's that supposed to mean?" Oliver asked. "A year ago, they wouldn't let you within 10 feet of a Caldwell celebration. Now, you're the star attraction." Conrad clinked his glass against Oliver's. "My dad's announcing your partnership tonight. Publicly." "I haven't even reviewed the contract yet," Oliver said, uneasy. "Doesn't matter. You earned this." Conrad's voice dropped. "Not because of a name, because of who you are. That counts for something in this town." Oliver gave a quiet, "Oh, thanks, really?" "No, man, I should be thanking you." Conrad's grin faded, his eyes heavy with memory. "You pulled me out of a train wreck marriage. You saw what I couldn't. You didn't owe me that, but you did it anyway." "We both deserved better," Oliver said. "To better choices," Conrad toasted, lifting his glass before slipping. Back inside. Left alone again, Oliver stayed at the railing, the night air cool against his face. His phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "Check your email now." He unlocked it and opened the message. An attachment. A property deed. His name was on it. Jack's old cabin. Another message arrived seconds later. "Tess and I bought it together. Happy early birthday. You gave me a second shot with my business. This is our way of paying it forward." Oliver looked up, and there they were. Jack and Tess standing in the terrace doorway wearing identical mischievous grins. "You didn't," Oliver murmured, his voice tight with emotion. "We did," Tess said. "Jack's moving closer to town and we figured you'd need space. When I visit, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to," Jack replied, stepping forward. "Just live in it. Enjoy it. You deserve this, Oliver." As they made their way back into the glowing warmth of the ballroom, Oliver let it settle in. How far he'd come in just 1 year. Once cast out, barely tolerated. And now? He had a name that mattered. But more importantly, he'd become someone who mattered. From a marriage that had drained the life from him to relationships that finally poured it back in. As the evening wrapped up, glasses clinking, final speeches echoing, and bold conservation pledges declared, Conrad Sr. stepped to the microphone and, with a proud smile, introduced Oliver as the firm's newest partner. The applause that followed wasn't just professional, it was personal, a sound Oliver couldn't have imagined hearing just a year ago. As he slipped on his coat and they made their way toward the door, his phone buzzed. One last message. The number wasn't saved, but the words carried a familiar sting. "Looks like you finally made it." "I'm glad, really. No name. No need." Oliver stared at it for a second, a storm flickering behind his eyes. Then, calm and deliberate, he deleted the message. No reply. No trace. He powered off the phone and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Ready to head out?" Tess asked gently as they reached the car. "More than ready," Oliver said, his voice steady. The drive home curled through the dark Carolina roads, flanked by trees like silent witnesses. Jack snoozed in the back seat, and Tess hummed softly, to the radio. No one needed to speak. The silence was warm, not empty. When they finally pulled up to the cabin nestled high in the mountains, the place Oliver had carved out of rock and memory with his own two hands, they paused on the porch. He glanced around at the familiar view, mountains like quiet guardians, stars strung across the night like a promise, and the faint sparkle of Asheville lights blinking far below. "You know," Oliver said, barely above a whisper, "some families you're born into." He trailed off. Tess looked up. Jack stepped beside him. "Others," he continued, a flicker of peace settling in his chest. "You build, brick by brick, moment by moment." Jack placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Tess slipped her fingers into his, and for the first time in years, maybe ever, Oliver Wilder felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Whole.